Lainie Sevante Wulkan is a multi-modality healer with advanced certifications in food healing, theta healing, and EFT tapping. She holds a BS in food science, dietetics, and nutrition from California State University Northridge and was top of class in Jeff Premack's Conquering All Disease Advanced Food Healing Instructor Program. She joins me today on Uncorking a Story to discuss her latest book, High Vibrational Wellness, Intuitive Healing Therapies to Nourish Your Body Temple. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Lainie.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good to be here, Mike. Nice
Laney,
to
I'm excited to have you here, and
Good.
I'm curious, where does your story as an author begin?
Well, I love that question. It hasn't been asked. And some people come in to this planet, they said, "Oh, I'm going to be an author. I want to write. I don't think that really happened for me. I had always been teaching and I have always been expressing myself. And I think it must have been 15, 20 years ago. I can't pinpoint it. I just woke up in the middle of the night and had this guidance, if you will, to write something down. And I just wrote it down on my computer, and it ended up being a children's book. And it was called Finn's Giant Leap. And I thought that was just the end all be all. I was going to write what I was, saw in a dream or meditated on, if you will. And it was about how it's a positive messaging story. And it was about a frog that gets in some trouble and he learns to believe in himself and he comes across a fairy or an angel. And I just kind of worked that book. Didn't say, now I'm a children's book author. It was just sort of this book that came out. And then it seemed that there were more things to express in the years that came. And now think I'm going on my ninth book. And next year I got 7 or 8 more books going. Now it's just like the floodgates are open because I've really claimed that now is like this is a great way for people to learn what I want to share.
Yeah. When you
Yeah,
were when you were growing up, when you were a kid, was this ever on your radar screen? Did you ever say to yourself, when I grow up, I think I'm going to be a writer or an author?
never. No, like I said, that was even my first, whoa, write this down. I never thought, but I realized I always journaled. I love to write. I always did book reports. I mean, I was very always expressive. Never thought there was actually a format to it. But I would say that when you get the calling, however that is, or the inspiration, and to follow it. And if it's in alignment with your heart and you want to bring these thoughts out or express, or you have your point of view that needs to get out, once it's there, you can't undo it because it's just in there saying, get out. And it's really, that's how it's been for me. And in my teachings as a spiritual teacher and a food healer, and I'm now known as the food oracle, so many times people have said, wow, I'd really love you to express more of that. Can you, could it be in a book? Could it be in a documentary? Can it be in a oracle deck? And now I've done all of those. So I realized that I'm guided to bring whatever it is I want to share with the world in a format, but books have always been a passion. In fact, if you think about it, for me, my mother was a book dealer. And it never put two and two together that one day I'd be the author. So, I mean, she's older in age, dealing with a little dementia, but when she sees a book show up at the nursing home, she's very proud to share that, wow, I must have had an impact. But I did grow up seeing books all around the house, and everyone has a point of view and they're all have merit. It's not like it's, oh, that's been done before. Everyone has their own personality to bring to it that someone may resonate with.
Yeah, I love this notion of like writing or being an author kind of being a calling of sorts. And, while maybe you didn't know when you were younger that this was going to be a path that you were going to walk on, it sounds like there were definitely signs back then. Like hindsight being 2020, kind of being, you mentioned book reports and even, that your mom was a book dealer, which I think is really cool. It sounds like though that at one night this came to you. Was it like in a full download or
It literally was. I was woken up in the middle of the night. And they say there's actually a spiritual window from 3 to 5. And it was 3 o'clock. Write this down. And I wrote it down. And I thought, wow, this is a great story. And whether it's for young children, in the 3 to 8-year-olds. I've had 88-year-olds read the book Finn's Giant Leap and say that message really spoke to me as well. So I felt that in that moment that, wow, there's something so rewarding to be able to share. This was a creative story. And I'm now kind of 15 years later, I'm now kind of bringing that character back. I'm going to, he'll, it's a frog, Finn's Giant Leap, and he goes on an adventure. Now he's going to go on a few more. And I've incorporated him into that. And um, it's been pretty amazing. And what I can tell you, you asked me about childhood. Now, I grew up in a very spiritual family, and I'm a multi-generational intuitive. Our family's a family of women healers. And so I grew up with oracle cards and tarot cards, and people might not think that those are books, but those are absolutely books. Because whenever you create a set of cards, well, not so much tarot, let's just say oracle, you have to provide a guidebook. So it occurred to me that when and I've always had oracle cards, that's been sort of my passion my whole life. So actually, when I actually created 5 years ago the food healing oracle deck, I realized, wow, I just wrote a book of 60 cards and 60 messages and information. I'm like, this is, call it a guidebook, but it is a book and it's in 35 countries. So books come in many forms, right? Now we have digital, and that particular format is called a deck, but it's really a book and cards. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was early on. I always had a passion that I knew one day I'm going to create an oracle deck. That was clear as day.
You mentioned being intuitive, and I promise we're going to talk about the latest book, but I need to just kind
Okay.
of go down this route a little bit, this road a little bit. What does it mean to be an intuitive? What and how did you know? I mean, it sounds like you were surrounded by this. You kind of grew up inside, a spiritual household. But what
Yes.
does it mean to be intuitive, and how did you know that you were one of them?
Well, I learned early on that when I felt something or I saw something, they call them clairs, clairaudient, clairvoyant, clairsentience, touch, feel, see, think, and actually sometimes smell and taste. I noticed as a child that I was able to get an understanding of that teacher is going to say this, or, oh, they're going to say my name wrong. And oh my gosh, they're going to put me in the back row. Like I just was always accurate with what I would start to feel. My great grandmother was the town psychic in Russia and the healer. And my mom was a pet healer. So I had an understanding of intuition that I would go quiet and understand the voices inside were giving me guidance versus other asking outwardly someone else to provide me that info. I learned early on to check inside, trust your gut. And everyone says that, but it's really true. And particularly in my line of work now, which is trust your gut in terms of what your body needs. Get to that. I realized that I was very intuitive, and they say water signs, if you will, are very intuitive. You can understand, you can get a sense of things, a sense of people, a sense of energies, a sense of understanding ahead of time what you think's going to happen. And then when you start to put it into practice and say, I'm sensing this, I'm sensing that, and you see accuracy, then you can, have that confidence and claim it even more. It's like, wow, I'm really doing that. And I think it wasn't really, I have to say, 30 plus years later, maybe more, a mentor of mine actually does missing persons with tarot cards for the FBI. And I just thought, that's so phenomenal. And she said, you have always been giving people readings and you've never charged for it. Wouldn't it be cool to see what that's like? So she gave me the name of one of these sites, and people would send me a question, and I would close my eyes and say, wow, that's a British kindergartner teacher from London. Like I just saw a picture of it. And because they send you user 92468, it's not someone's explaining who they are. And I would answer their question and they'd write back 5 stars. This is amazing. And so I always became evidential. I put what I felt to be intuitive to the test. And then she encouraged me to actually do it to the public. And that was a long time ago. And I thought, well, I guess I'll start charging and creating sessions. And, the rest is sort of history because now
Yeah.
I do those impressions or those intuitions with food. So it's an evolution.
Yeah. You're mentioning your great grandmother being the town psychic in Russia. Just doing a little math here, that probably wasn't a safe profession in Russia back in those days.
No, you're right. True that. That's like during the times of the pogroms. And, especially if you come from different religious backgrounds, there's persecution. Yeah. Uh, I've heard lots of stories of my family lineage, but what I've come to understand, and I've watched my mother, whose gift was with animals, that my gifts with people, that it's been there. And I watch it now with one of my daughters, that she's very gifted in that she activates that intuitive side. And so it would come to be all these decades later that I would open the Center for Intuitive Food Therapy, which is really how to understand what our body's trying to tell us. And there's an intuition that everyone can access. It's not like you need to come to me and I can tell you what is it that's going on. It's more of why are you craving that food and what should you have for dinner tonight when you go to the grocery store and you're saying, I need to have those Brussels sprouts. I created a system now that explains some of the things, at least according to my own intuitive guidance. And
Yeah.
other people seem to have liked it because this book is now in 35 countries.
Well, I think that's a great segue into talking about the book. So, what can you share about high vibrational wellness, intuitive eating? I'm sorry, intuitive healing therapies to nourish your body temple. There's a lot to unpack just in that title, but what can you share with us
Well,
about it?
I have chills. See, you're intuitive right there. The original title was High Vibrational Eating. So I think you're looking at the picture of the cover, right? And you see all this food or no?
I'm actually just looking at the title in my notes, but
So I had about a year and change ago, I was in another book. It went best selling all around the world called The Energy Healer's Oracle. And this woman from London and Wales, she had gone around the world and looked for people who had a very unique modality, not, a healing technique, a modality where they created it, not that they were the next 350,000 Reiki person. So anyway, she selected me in her book. I was intuitive food therapy and I wrote a chapter. It was this collaboration. And the publisher said, this is so unique. I loved your chapter. And she offered me a book deal and said, why don't you do your own collaborative book? I said, I'd love to, because has anyone ever talked about food and eating and the consciousness of it and how to raise our vibration and how to live for longevity, all the things that I wanted to talk about. And so when I and it's a 25 author story, trying to make it brief here. But in any ways, I realized when I was going in and meeting with chefs and food coaches and food, and bring them on as one of my co-authors, it was very clear to me that food, in listening to my intuition, is not just about what's going into the body. It's really three-prong approach. It's, yes, feeding your body, but it's also feeding your thoughts and our mindset and mindfulness and things that help us come into balance. And then it's also feeding your soul, feeding meditation, prayer, gatherings with spiritual friends and family, religious or spiritual. So I thought, well, we really need, if we're going to have this book come out, it can't be just eating. I didn't want people thinking it was a spiritual cookbook. So I changed to high vibrational wellness. And I started to bring in many different colleagues who can speak to those different feeding your thoughts, feeding your body, or feeding your soul. And that, I think, really made a change. And the book hit #1 in 7 countries. And there's 6 categories in the US and Amazon. We hit #1 in all 6. And it struck a chord because when you read the 25 stories from the different authors, there's a little bit of all of us in all those stories. They all bravely tell their story, a story, sometime in their life, something major that's happened to them, that then these are little mini vignettes, 25, something that has happened in their life, most of the time very traumatic, and then how they came out the other side with their chosen modality or healing therapy, intuitive healing therapy. And then they provide that in the book. So you really get 25 stories, short stories, and you get 25 tools on how to improve your way to better wellness. So that's how this was born. I just conceived it, became the lead author, wrote the first and the last, and put everybody together. And kind of like a recipe, it was, you know, a good production for sure, and
Yeah.
making big differences for people.
Well, I want to talk about some of those differences. When we have higher vibrational wellness, like how does that manifest in our lives? So it sounds like the book helps you get there, right?
Yeah.
The book has different ways in helping you raise your vibrational wellness. But what does it mean to have higher vibrational wellness, and what happens when our vibrations are higher?
I love that question. Well, first off, everyone has a different perception of what that is. Someone would say that they have achieved a high vibrational existence because they've law of attraction, they've brought in the love of their life. Others would say they healed from a healing crisis. Someone else would say they learned to invest finally, and now they're, swimming in Benjamins. Everyone has their own way of interpreting that. So what I would say is that high vibrational wellness is when we are in our best state emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Our four bodies are just humming. Life is in flow. Things are showing up, with roses and unicorns and rainbows, where we've created some of our bucket lists, our goals are met, our heart feels complete. We're just moving in unison with life versus in resistance and why does this happen to me, and I can't believe this happened again, and moving down lower vibrational, because there's a law of attraction out there that we start to operate, let's just say, at a level 100. There is actually a scale of vibration called, David Hawkins created it. And anger and rage and jealousy and grief are all very low vibrational energies. So our bodies attract whether it's positive or negative. So we attract more of it, and we kind of get into these dark cycles. Well, high vibrational wellness to me is someone who is more living in love, higher vibrational words, love, peace, joy, harmony. And so we look for things that are a harmonious life, filled with love, filled with peace, filled with joy. And you can do that in a variety of ways. I express being high vibrational with food. Other people will do it through always having a great mindset and, learning to balance their depression, anxiety. So just recapping that, it's, to me, high vibrational wellness is truly being in flow and at your highest state of being emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually.
Which sounds easy when you
Does
say it, but
it?
in practice, it's like it's hard though, right? I mean, because there are times, because there are times when I'm feeling great mentally, like I'm either having a good day or I'm going through a good period, um, but for some reason, I'll do something to sabotage it, and maybe that's eating something I shouldn't be eating, right? And then I'll immediately feel like, and I'm sure there's an underlying psychological reason why I sabotage myself half the time. But
With food? Are you saying with food specifically?
oh, it could be food, it could be beverages,
Yeah.
but it could be just, something I do where I
Just when you're
sabotage.
about to pop open to the next level, I bet.
Maybe it could be, it could be, but it's, because there are so many different elements or I guess different parts that make up the whole, right? So
Yes.
there's the psychological piece, there's the physical piece, there's the emotional piece. Well, I
And
guess
mental.
and mental. And it's hard to keep all of those things in check. It's I guess that's the Earth school we're in, right? Maybe it's trying to figure out how to keep all that stuff in check, but
I
it's
think that's what it's all about. And there's always, you're only as good as the weakest link, right? So you can't be super thriving in one area and have a complete deficit there. It will pull you down. So high vibrational wellness is sort of having those things all in check. And so you're the common denominator to all those things, this body. And so it would behoove you to at least start with feeding it what the fuel, what you want. And as an example, we're nature, and people don't really realize like we're the walking embodiments of nature. And what I mean by that is if you look at nature in terms of the five elements, earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. So earth, and I'm going to compare it to us as a body to show you that we're nature. So earth would be our bones, our physical structure. Uh, and so when we are ashes to, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, we start off with the bones, but that's our earth element. Earth, air. Air is our breath. That's literally for living, is the breath that goes in and out. Fire, earth, air, fire. Fire is all the systems of the body, all require energy. There's not a system in your body burning calories. Uh, the endocrine system, reproductive system, cardio, everything requires energy. The mitochondria, the cells to divide, everything requires the fire element. When there's no fire, you have stagnation and then you can get disease. Earth, air, fire, water. So that's our blood, and that's the water that flows through us. And then spirit is our soul. So if we are these walking nature bodies, if you will, we should be eating according to nature. And there's ways to do that. I share in my books, in High Vibrational Wellness, as well as my prior books, that there are foods that relate to those areas. They're not in the inner aisles. They're not in the 300 words you don't recognize and can't break down and they last for 20 years food. They're more in the outer aisles where things are fresh and bioavailable. But I think nature is getting our attention to understand that if we can feed this temple, this body, according to nature, more simply, it'll become easier to have all those things in check. They all start to balance out. When someone's very angry and fiery, they just lost their job, got past it for the promotion, whatever it is, they're well into their fire element, burning up mad. So you'd want some foods that actually, let's balance those out, cool down. Cucumbers, things with water, watermelon, watercress, things that actually kind of fan the flames. And we can actually do that to help us get out of those moods, to help us kind of come back to center, to allow us then to kind of move into those higher peace, love, joy sort of
yeah. Which
aspects.
which I think is could be a hard sell in our culture today, right? I would if I had a DeLorean and could go back in time and you go to like my grandparents' generation, right? So turn of the century, 1900s. Um, that's how they ate, right? They ate organic foods because they grew organic foods in their
Yes.
garden, and that's
Yes.
that's how they cooked, right?
That's it.
Their meat was fresh. They made my grandmother would make a tomato, we're Italian, would make a tomato sauce with tomatoes from a garden, probably in her
Yes.
backyard. Um, but in today's day and age, we're driven by convenience. Things come out of boxes. We spend more time in the center of the store than on the perimeter. And it's hard. And those foods also economically, can be less expensive than buying your organic produce.
That's
Um,
the irony, is that those are the ones that they may be more economic now, but if you think about the cost of once you do get sick, later, I always say you might as well pay a little bit now up front and have preventative energy in the body.
right. No, I completely agree. Completely agree. But I think just culturally, it can be a difficult sell because of like what we've been conditioned to. And the marketing industry that I've worked in for 30 years didn't do us any favors there
Yeah.
either.
But I think about my teachings, which are like, what are you talking about? Food talks to us. And what do you mean that strawberries mean love and artichoke means forgiveness? And that's a whole nother story. But those are kind of some of the oracle cards. But what I feel that these books, these teachings are extremely timely because so many people are eating unconsciously, but somewhere in them they know it. This deck or these teachings that were, written as a oracle deck form, like I said, it could have been just a book. Next year I'll have a book of feeding your chakras, and there'll be 7 little books, 7 series, like a healing handbook for each one. But I I sense that because this has been shipped to so many countries and so many people have asked to interview, and that these books have all hit #1 status, that people generally know they got to do better. And that's why, even though it may be counterintuitive to the convenience of life, I do think as people are starting to become more aware and some of these principles are becoming a little bit more mainstream, that these will start to be the norm. I mean, like you said, talk about early on, my mom's motto growing up was with ingredients. This is how I grew up. More than 3, leave it be. And I just thought that was the wackiest thing my mother could say in front of my friends. But she upped it. She would say, if there's more than 3 on the label, it's not going on the table. And I was like mortified. And then decades later, I heard myself say it to my children, my 2 daughters, and I was like, oh my God. But she was right. She had it. She had it right. Simple ingredients is best. Simplify. And I know we're in a fast-paced, convenient society, but I think slowing down, less is best. And if you could just get an ingredient that's actually just the strawberry or just the blueberry or just the cucumber, there's so much packed in that. But then when you start to put it all together like a salsa, there's all this nutrition. I mean, there's things that you can do when you wake up to looking at your plate and realizing there's a lot more going on. Even when you start to realize what you crave, you're like, oh my God, I am so surprised, not surprised. I just picked the shadow card because I had a really bad day. It's just amazing um, what I've seen happen and how it really is going to show you a better understanding of the food that you're choosing to make for your family that night. You're
Yeah.
creating intention, and intention's everything.
Yeah, I mean it is interesting. I mean, many of us know, and especially if you've had like a basic nutrition class, we know there is a direct link between what we put in our bodies and our health, right? So many of us choose to ignore it or intentionally forget about it. Maybe for the sake of convenience, but maybe for the sake of a more emotional issue. The other day, I mean, I'm an avid runner, so that is my thing,
Mm.
and it's something I do to keep myself healthy. But I also know that there are days when I want to reward myself with something, and oftentimes that's food. The other day I was at work and my colleague Amelia sits next to me. I look at her, I'm like, Amelia, today's the day. She's like, what are you talking about? Today's the day we're gonna do something bad for lunch. She's like, why? And I'm like, because darn it, I want Shake Shack for lunch, right? And, and that's like what I was feeling in that moment. And she's like, you know what? If we order within the next 10 minutes, Simply Greens, which is the salad place next door, delivers for free. I'm like, okay, you sold me. So we got salads instead. But there is that I don't know. And I play this game and I know other people play this game too. It's like I had a great run, therefore I can do this, which is get the treat. And I think so often we look at
So
food
true.
as reward versus fuel. And that's like a little reprogramming I personally know that I need to do.
Well, listen, I live in Florida, hurricane capital. And I know when the hurricane's coming, you go into the grocery store and I look at everybody and everyone gets their hurricane snacks. And it's all crap. It is all, can I say crap? I don't
You
know if
can
I
take
can.
one. Absolutely.
It is the worst. And everyone's because they're thinking they deserve it. They're scared. They're going to go and get all the things that shouldn't be. And you could go there and you're thinking, well, you're living through a hurricane. I get it. I tend to, and I've been through now enough to know that like I go and I look for foods that are going to sustain me, keep me grounded, give me energy. And I double up, I double down on my nutrition in those where in the past I had probably done what you did and what people I see do with their hurricane snacks, like go full throttle, like full bags of pink and white circus animal cookies and you name it. And it's not to say every now and then I don't do that, but I now actually have tools, and there's some of the tools actually, one of the chapters in the new High Vibrational Wellness book that is called Transmuting the Toxins in Your Food, where you can actually have a tool, it's in the book, that allows you to kind of pray over the food to allow it to align with your body, even though it may appear not aligned, but you can actually intend it because the emotion around, I know I'm eating bad, this is crap, da da da, is worse. You're putting that frequency in the body versus just being okay with it and eating it and moving on and on to the next adventure till you start balancing back out. So
Well,
people have a choice.
that's an interesting concept. So your intention around it can reduce or improve the foods itself, its vibrational characteristics or
Yes.
power.
Yes. Yeah, even the way it digests. Because when people are angry in the kitchen and they're making food, you can feel that. You can feel that energy. So if you're sitting there going, I shouldn't eat this. I know this is bad. This is going to be terrible. I know I was clogging my arteries. You're literally telling your body that. You could just say, you know what? I'm going to be in alignment with this because I know this is going to taste amazing and this is what I need right now is so much better than judging yourself with that food because you can move on from that. Your body's much more receiving of that than all the negative vibrational energy you're putting by talking down about yourself because you know it's bad.
Yeah. Gosh, we are complex creatures, we
Yeah, we are.
humans.
And on some levels are really simple. More than three, leave it be. Like just eat simply without all the words that you can't pronounce that were made in a chemistry lab. I mean, I have a
Yeah,
degree in
definitely.
food science. I've seen that back in the day, analyzing, what goes into, certain foods that these big, I won't name them, but these big corporations would send to our labs in the food science and ask to analyze it. Like I've seen the science of it, and I like more the spirit of it, of our foods.
Yeah. Well, very cool. So it sounds like this book has done very well and hitting some bestseller lists and being in
Yeah.
multiple countries.
Yeah, it really has. I'm so grateful. I mean, we have people from different countries in the book. There's 25 authors, and everybody eats. It's not a foreign concept that it's just a US thing. So yeah, people everywhere have really felt called. I mean, there's very interesting chapters in there, conquer your cravings and make food fun again, but there's also more, like I said, more mindfulness topics too, and how to have more spirit breathing. There's a topic on breathing, like just how to come into proper breathing for the body. All sorts of different topics are in there.
I mean, you're someone who certainly grew up. These are not foreign concepts to you. But I'm curious with 20 plus authors, did you learn anything new as you were putting this together? What surprised you the most, if anything?
Oh, that's a great question. What surprised me the most is how everything's connected. Like you start, there were some chapters in there, there's astrology and nutrition, and then there's the mindfulness and the breathing, but everyone keeps going back to follow your inner compass, that no matter how you present it, it still comes back to like you are the source and you are your own best judge. Even when it comes to medicines and doctors. It's like, trust your gut. That's why people go to many doctors for different opinions instead of just giving their power to the one person. So I think what surprised me the most is that, surprised but not surprised, is that we are more simple, I feel, than we are led to believe, that everything we need is already inside. We just have to start getting back into understanding this idea of intuitive understanding of self.
Yeah. It seems like when we're kids, or like, and I look at my kids are like 22 now. We have triplets. Um, but like when they were younger, I know I mean, how could a guy like me have three 22-year-olds? I look so young. Uh, but it's like, when we think about kids, like they're very simple. Like their needs are very simple. But somewhere along the way, we complicate things. And I don't know if it's the process of socialization or things about our culture, but we go from being like really simple and having real simple needs to getting really, 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 really complex. But then I look at like my mother passed away in July, but I look at her at the end of her life, and her needs were very, very, very simple again, and it was very similar. It was like she left this world kind of the same way she came into it. um but something happens, like as we mature. Like why do things get so complicated?
That's life in the modern age of fast-paced technology, time speeding up, and lots just moving fast. I mean, I really relate. I'm actually caregiving my mother right now. She's has dementia, and it's just watching her brain and watching, it's just, for me, from, I guess, a scientist point of view, baffled, and then also just watching just the physical side and the spiritual. And I watched, remember I told you she was the healer of the animals. All the animals lay on her bed. It's like she's this tree, and animals like, yep, she's still the healer, no matter what they are hearing come out of her mouth. It's just amazing. But you're right. It's back to simplicity. And I think that's always what nature has intended. And nature's always had the clues. I mean, I express a lot in my books that food looks like the organ that it heals. And people have seen that, where the carrots and the blueberries look like the eyes, and actually the lungs look like grapes, and celery looks like bones. These are all ingredients that have what they do for those. Red bell peppers look like the chamber of a heart, and they're excellent for cardiovascular. So I think that when we pull back and start to see that nature has provided what we needed, we've just, in this world, we've overprocessed on every level.
Yeah, I mean, the 13-year-old boy in me wants to ask you, what do you think bananas heal? But I won't do that.
Bananas are a spontaneity card.
Oh, there you go. All
Yeah,
right.
I'll leave you with that.
Very good.
Okay.
Well, Lainie, one way I like to get to know my guests a little bit more is by asking a couple of pop culture questions. So, if you're game, I'm curious. What were some of your favorite things to watch on TV when you were growing up?
Well, then that's going to date me, but so what, right? I now not surprised, but I was always into like Isis and Shazam, and those were the Wonder Woman and all the mystical, larger than life figures that, to me, it doesn't surprise me. As well as music. I was an Earth, Wind, and Fire fanatic, went to every concert, and my whole platform's about nature and elements. And so I just thought they were larger than life. So yeah, it carries with you from what the things you resonate with back then to now.
Yeah, no kidding. I remember, I assume when you say Wonder Woman, the original Linda Carter series,
Yeah.
Wonder Woman,
Oh yeah.
with those bracelets where she would deflect bullets. Yeah.
Yes.
Who
Do
didn't
you
want those
remember what?
bracelets?
I think you're younger than me, but Isis was a great show. It was all about, oh, mighty Isis. And then Shazam, these were just all these super larger than life characters, but they're based on, s- figures in the world that, people to this day, Isis, there's a whole Isis following, the goddess. So
Yeah.
yeah, all the goddess mystical lore and all that, I've always been attracted to.
I remember a Shazam cartoon. Shazam and Captain Marvel. Am I remembering that correctly?
It's
It was like
before that. And I worked
okay.
at Marvel back in the day.
Did you really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I was around a lot of the Spider-Man in the beginnings, back when, when Stan Lee was around. Yeah, but no, this was not a cartoon. This was like a live action hero, kind of like Jamie Summers, Bionic Woman, and Bionic
Oh yeah.
$6 Million Man. All that was all my jam.
I can't tell you how many times my twin brother and I would hold tennis balls in our hands to try and crush them, like Jamie Summers did in the that opening sequence of her the Bionic Woman.
Yes. Oh yeah. I've always she was like Jamie Summers and Linda Carter were like, the the amazing women. I always thought, oh, I'm gonna be big and powerful like that one day.
That's right. That's right. You mentioned Earth, Wind, and Fire, but who else did you listen to musically when you were growing up?
Uh, well, I was a classic rock girl, and so um the Beatles, Beatles, Rush, Who, I mean, I'm pretty much all into that, but full Beatles fan for sure.
I just my daughter, one of my girls and I went to go see Iron Maiden back in November, and there was a band opening up for them called The Who, but it was the HU, and they were this Mongolian metal band. That was
Whoa.
awesome. They were awesome. They blew us away. Like they were really couldn't understand a word they were saying because they were singing in some language it's dead, but
Yeah.
the music itself was really cool. I have
Yeah. I
to say.
mean, Styx, Iron Maiden, I mean, you name it. And I mean, I was always a music aficionado, to be honest. And then I married a music producer and who runs a recording studio, makes music and albums all day long. It's great,
Well,
so
that's really
we're very
cool.
much into the music scene for sure.
Very cool. And then just to round us up here, if you can go back in time and give some words of advice to a younger Lainey, what would you tell your younger self?
Understand that patience is a real virtue. Yeah, like patience is king, queen, and no need to rush things. Let it all just unfold in perfect ways because everything's going to build on one another. I mean, I could never have imagined that as a child, the things that I saw and felt and expressed that would lead me to the journey I've taken, which was to get a degree in food science and dietetics and 30 plus years later be writing about it. But meanwhile, after that, working in Hollywood for a top chef. I mean, my career has just taken me so in many different directions that enjoy the ride, and allow patience to be really upfront and important as you
I
go.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lainey, I'm sure we've piqued some people's interest. So where can people learn more about you? Do you have a website or social media that you're active on?
Yeah, I have so many, but the main website to find me is the Center for Intuitive Food Therapy. And that was a long word, so I abbreviated it. So it's SIFT, CIFT, official.com.
Very cool. I'll be sure to put that in our show notes so people
Okay.
can find you nice and easily. And I'll say, Lainey, thank you for stopping by Uncorking a Story and letting me uncork yours.
Thank you. This was awesome. You are amazing, and I look forward to maybe being back one day.
Flattery will get you everywhere. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.